Hi and welcome. This is the second video in my video tutorial on how to use Google activities in UiPath. So the explanation already exists. Let's just jump into it and see how we can use the right activities. So we are working with our example file, right? So we have currently only 2 rows of data and we want to add more rows, right? So essentially, like, what we can do is we can use the right range activity. So if we drag and drop the right range activity, you will see that it's pulling the connection automatically. We can select the sheet by going and navigating through our Google Drive. So it's this one, example sheet. We can select the range and we can select what to write. So I have created just one more row, one table with one additional row, and we can do that. So if we click in the drop down, you can see that we have 4 options. So overwrite, append, append write, and insert. So let's go over each one. I'll maybe showcase each one, but I just want to explain them really quickly. The overwrite activity will start from basically A1 or A2 depending if you select headers or not, right? So essentially, like, if we run it now, it will put in the headers and it will overwrite this row. Then if we select append, it will automatically find the last row, which is in our case A4, and it will add rows including or not including the headers. So keep that in mind. So if, for example, if we don't want to add headers because we're adding at the bottom, then we need to select this as false. Append write will essentially find the first free column, which is the F1, and it will write the data in here. And insert will ask us where do you want to insert the data, so you can tell it position 1, and it will essentially do this. It will insert it row in here, so it should move this row one below. So let's test the activities and see exactly how it's working. So bear in mind that, like, I'm not 100% sure. This is like not pre-recorded and I don't have any script, so maybe something is not going to work for the first time, but let's see how it's working. So we're going to write, so we're not going to include the headers, we're going to append the range in here, so we're expecting one additional row in here. So let's do exactly that. And let's see what is data that we're going to get. So keep in mind, sometimes these Google Sheet activities can be a little bit slow, but we'll wait for them. If they are not working, we can stop it and rerun it, but it should write the information in here. So essentially, like all like we did with the read activities, we can also dynamically configure this activity to work with variables, and then we can use those variables to work with a large amount of sheets. If those sheets are coming dynamically, then we can use that in order to define it in a way how we want to. So okay, so this for some reason is not working at the moment. Let's wait for it just a bit, and then if it is not, so essentially, like, the sheet ID is the ID that is in here. So each of the sheets that we're using has a unique ID, and it's always here. So you can, like, if you know the full URL, you can use the regex, but I think that these new activity packages, you can also put the whole URL, and they're smart enough to detect the ID themselves. The range, when we are writing the data, should be, so if it depends on the activity that we're going to work with, and this is really not working for me at the moment, so let's wait. Okay, so now it worked finally, and you can see that I have this information here. Keep in mind that this is a formula, so we can just like drag it down and it will work, but it wrote the information here. Okay, so that is the first thing that I wanted to show you. The second thing that I wanted to show you is how to configure this activity dynamically. So we're going to comment this out. So essentially, like, you can select the ID. If you go and if you drag and drop this right range activity, you can select the ID, so str sheet ID. You can select the range, so you can use variable in here, and you can use str sheet name, right? So you can use that. I don't want to include the headers. I kind of don't want to use the variable in here. Now this is interesting one. You can use the variable in here as well, but if you open an expression editor, you will see that this is type of range write mode. And if you create an activity range write mode variable, right? If you create it here, it will mark it in here. But if you select it in here, you will see that it's type of UiPath GSuite activity sheet enum read write mode, right? How the hell do you like initialize that? So essentially, like, you can type in UiPath GSuite activity sheet enum read write mode, and then type of the mode that you want. So if we put in a dot, you will see that we have the append write, insert write, and override. So these are all of the options that we can use in the write range activity that we need. So I selected the append activity, and the sheet name is, because I'm using the append activity in the range, I'm only using the sheet range because the append activity is going to add into the last row, and this is the activity. This is how the configuration looks like. So let's run this and see how exactly it is working. So now let's just wait for the activity to work. So essentially, like, in the background, what's happening is, if you ever configured Google some of the Google activities, you will know that this is connecting and keeping the connection between UiPath Orchestrator and your Google account, and it's essentially an API call. So what can happen in here is that you can reach the maximum number of API calls on your account. Keep in mind of that if you're working with a large number of Google activities in your automation, this can happen, and I'll show you exactly how to mitigate this. But let's wait for this one. It should write the data in here. It should be the same data, nothing special. Nothing special. So the next activity that we are going to showcase is the write cell. The rate limit exceeded. So this is what I wanted to, exactly what I was telling you. So essentially, like, what you need to create is some kind of an automation where it's going to reach, if this is the exception that is happening, it's going to retry it, and then it's going to essentially, like, if you give it enough time, for example 10 seconds or 5 seconds or something like that, you can, like, mitigate this issue. But let's like stop it. Like, I'm not lucky. This is really like okay, now it worked, and you can see that we just added a new row of data. It's the same as the first activity, but we just use dynamically. We just use it dynamically, right? So let's say that, for example, we want to change this mode, and we don't want to append. We want to append write. So if we use this mode, and if we run the activity again, you will see that where the data is going to be written, and hopefully it will work fast again. So the data should be somewhere in here, because append write would find the first free column, and then it will write it in there. Let's run it again. So essentially, the next activity that I'm going to showcase is the write cell. And the right cell is simple enough, so we also can like put in the sheet, like what is the spreadsheet, what is the sheet name, and where do we want to write that information in. So in F1 we would write in the phone number, and this is pretty simple. Oh my god, like okay, finally. So you can see that the data was typed in into the first column. So append right essentially work as it finds the first column on the right of our table. So it can come in handy, right? So the next activity would be right cell, and I'm going to showcase you this as well. And this right cell, let's just test the activity itself. And then you will see that it's just that one activity, and you will see that it write the data in here. So it's pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. There are a few more activities that we can use for writing the data. So we have I have showcased you the right cell and the right range, but we also have the right column and the right row activities. The right column activities is an interesting one, because essentially like you can put a array of information. You can also select like where to put it, override, append, or insert. So let's say that we want to append to the right, and if you run this activity, what will happen, it will put your array in here, which is pretty cool. Sometimes you need it, you don't want to write data as this, you need to write data as this. So sometimes it could be useful. So I'm really happy that we have this activity as well, because like you can use this, but you would need essentially to transpose it. So you can see that it will write the data in here, and the right row is the same essentially, like it's just writing the row of the data, but instead of the data table that we have provided previously, we can provide it an array. So essentially it will just write that one row of data. So let's run it and see how it's working. So you can see that it wrote the data in here. So it's pretty useful. Keep in mind that if you have some formulas, that it can be a little bit tricky. So let's say that we have a formula in here. So right now, like what I need to do, I need to like drag and drop it for each of the like clients, right? So essentially, like if you're actually working with Google Sheet, you will have something like this, and this is the formula that you're working with, and we need to remove this. So essentially this is going to work until the end of our sheet. So if we are reading, sometimes if you have an array formula, what can happen is, let's say that we want only to work until here. What can happen, it will detect the last row as 21, and then it will add a new data in 22. So this is what can happen sometimes. I'm not exactly sure when does it happen, but if you have this array formula, you can see that it is essentially until the end. And how the activity is working, it's working that it will essentially read like until the last of the rows and then add one more row below it. So yeah, keep that in mind. It can be a little bit tricky if you have those formulas. If you have something like that, you can use read range activities. You can use it to read the whole table. So essentially, if you use the read range, it will also tell you that it has 21 rows. Okay, this is this activity is really bugging me out. But essentially, like if you use the you can read whole table, then you can filter it for empty rows, and you will get the first available column, right? And then you will use the right range activity, and then you will write it to that column, to row 6, right? So you can work with that. Let's hope that this activity is going to finally connect and work, and then I will showcase you this. Additionally, what is also important with the right range activities, so you can combine it with the read range activities and everything, but the write range activity can add blank rows. It can add rows to the. Okay, let's enable this one. Let's, I guess, run it until here. Okay, so essentially what happened here, we have a formula. So this is an array formula. You can see that it's spreading throughout the, like if you have this formula, it's spreading throughout the whole table. So essentially, like, it detected 21 rows and it added the 22nd row. This is also powerful in a way, but it's also something that you don't want to do. But it's powerful in a way where if you want to add rows, so for example, if you're pasting something, it can happen that Google Sheet will tell you, oh, you don't have enough rows. So you can use the write range activities to add rows. So you can see that in here we have row 22, right? If we run it again, it will add in row 23. So keep that in mind, it's really important. So yeah, I think that that's all that I wanted to showcase you with the write range activities. You also saw like how it can be a little bit slow. Sometimes it can bug because at the end of the day, behind these activities are like complex API calls to our Google accounts, and sometimes, like, if the Google servers are slow, it can work slowly. If we are working with a lot of files, a lot of endpoints hits, it can block us. So keep that in mind when you're creating your automations. Hope that this helps. Please leave a like and subscribe to the video. That will mean a lot to me, and it will show me that these videos are actually helping someone. And until the next video, bye.